Audio made possible by www.jackettome.com. Audio Fanfiction Productions presents Wide Awake. Fanfiction written by Angskata003. Fanfiction inspired by the Twilight Saga written by Stephanie Meyer. Chapter 5. Maniacal Mints. Bella's point of view. I was standing at my kitchen door at midnight, biting my nails nervously with a bag of cookies in hand. Part of me wanted to just stay inside. That'll show him, I thought bitterly. Until my mind got the better of me and started panicking at whether or not he, himself, would even show up to notice my absence. I probably shouldn't care given the way he treated me, cold and icy. Even Tyler Crowley could muster up a strained smile when he saw me. It would be better if I just stayed inside. Just let this whole thing go now, before I get myself in even deeper. I knew if I went out there and saw that tiny half-smile he gives me, and those deep gorgeous eyes, I would forget that I was completely furious at him. It would be the lowest kind of stupid to turn that doorknob. I had spent my entire afternoon and evening half pining, half fuming at Edward for his actions today. I couldn't really figure out why he could hurt me so much. Wasn't I happy with being avoided? Yes, I was. Perfectly content with being avoided. By everyone. The entire population of this town. Except Edward Cullen. I glowered at the doorknob in contempt, staring daggers at it like somehow Edward would feel it where he was, in his bedroom, or at the gazebo. It didn't matter. The smart thing would be to stay here, in the kitchen. Nice, warm, inviting kitchen. It was completely characteristic of me to stay here where it was safe. If I went out that door, it would mean I was officially pathetic, and Edward Cullen had the sickest kind of power over me. I let out some kind of agitated half-groan/half sigh, full of annoyance and self-loathing. Then I turned the stupid doorknob, and walked out the door. Because I was pathetic. It was cold tonight. Colder than usual. Which seemed to fit the occasion rather appropriately. There was a mild mist in the air, a lot like last night, but it felt like the rain was coming. Clutching my bag of maniacal mints for dear life, I began the walk of shame to the gazebo with my head hanging low. I tried telling myself that it was okay coming out here, because I was going to put him in place. I'd make him apologize. That was, of course, before I saw him, and felt a reflexive twinge of happiness at the thought that he did come tonight. He was sitting atop the table inside the gazebo with his feet resting on a bench, and his head in his hands. And, of course, because I was completely and utterly pathetic, my first thought was concern for him. I berated myself for wanting to offer him even the least amount of comfort. When he heard me approaching, he looked up. He looked so much more tired than last night, but he also looked concerned. I was even more frustrated now. He changed moods like underwear. He hopped down from the table gracefully, and ran his hands through his hair nervously. Good, I thought. I tried with every ounce of my self-control to keep the anger in my tired eyes as I threw the cookies down on the table, and plopped unceremoniously into my spot on the bench, crossing my arms in front of me on the tabletop. I could feel his stare boring holes into the side of my face, but I refused to look at him or speak.
"You're mad at me, Hut,"
he said in a sad tone. I snorted, not trusting my voice not to betray all the hurt I had felt earlier in the day. I shouldn't let him see how much it affected me. He let out a deep regretful sigh, and slipped into his spot on the bench.
"I didn't mean to come off like such a prick today. We just can't do this."
He waved a hand from me to him.
"At school, I really can't handle all of the attention."
He huffed. I stayed quiet. I mean, obviously he didn't want to see me at school, but I heard no apology in that speech. So I just sat glaring at the tabletop, in complete silence, waiting for the apology that would probably never come.
"Hey, look at me,"
he ordered softly. And because I was still pathetic, I did. I was so stupid. He was staring at me with those hard, tired green eyes, and a pleading look on his face. and as if the mere sight of him looking at me that way wasn't enough to completely crumble all my resolve, a breeze came by and sent his smell my way.
"Forgive me?"
he asked softly in his velvety smooth voice. My breath hitched a little. Pathetic. My mind was sneering at me. It wasn't completely lost to me that he never technically apologized. But the way he was looking at me. I let out a deep internal groan, that was so close to coming out of my lips I had to press them together tightly, and nodded in self-disgust, while sliding the cookies down the table. He twitched one side of his mouth up into the little half grenade I dreamed about sometimes, and grabbed a cookie. I figured if I was going to let Edward Cullen have this sick power over my will, I might as well enjoy it. So I laid my head on my arms, turning my face towards him to watch him eat my cookies. I vaguely recall hearing him say something regarding the mint chocolate confections he was reverently consuming. But all I could focus on was the line of his jaw as he chewed. The way it flexed and relaxed with every bite. I mumbled the name of the mint cookies distractedly, completely fixated on the workings of his mouth, and the faint look of stubble lining his chin. Fearing that I was headed even deeper into pathetic than I would willingly allow myself to go, I turned my head downwards, to glare at the table, beneath my arms.
"Tired?"
he asked softly in a concerned voice. I sat up and to look at him full on. The physical need to touch his hair as it rustled in the breeze was so overwhelming my fingers twitched. This needed to stop. Now. I couldn't even touch Edward Cullen, without being sent into hysterics, and even if I could, he would want nothing to do with me. He made that much clear in the quad today. So I made a silent pledge to myself in that moment. I would push all this whatever it was away, and use Edward for what he was. A somewhat friendly, nightly confidant. Nothing more. Stealing my resolve with a newfound confidence, I gave him the best smile I could muster, and shrugged, reaching for a cookie, and struggled to find out what normal would be for us. I would make this work. I'd give Edward the half-almost friendship he seemed to want. I'd do it, and I'd be a little pathetic for it. But in return I'd gain plenty myself. Someone to spend my long dark nights with. Someone who made me feel comforted and safe. Pathetic had nothing on that. The rain came shortly after my silent pledge to myself, and Edward and I entered into a comfortable conversation about his book collection. He was a fan of the classics much like me. He tried to talk to me about music, but I was completely lost as to what he was talking about. I don't really keep up with music much, I admitted apologetically.
"Holy shit, Swan. You can't be serious."
His eyes widened, and he wore a mock horrified expression. I cringed a bit at his casual use of my last name. I liked hearing him say my name. Bella. Calling me by my last name felt so formal. He called people like Alice and Mike by their last names, and openly despised them. I wanted to tell him not to call me that, but that was venturing into the all-too-familiar pathetic zone, so I let it slide, and shrugged at his question.
"Oh, my,"
he sighed.
"I have so much to teach you."
He smirked deviously with an unfamiliar sparkle in his eye. Music was obviously something he was very passionate about. So he spent the rest of the night schooling me in the subject of all things modern music. Most of the bands he told me about had the weirdest names. Some even made me chuckle, which is a real credit to their hilarity given my particular mood, which seemed to seep self-disgust every time I felt pathetic again, which happened far more often than I'd really care to admit. We didn't talk about our dreams anymore, thankfully. And I never told him about the incident earlier in the day with Mike. I felt like we were doing a carefully crafted dance of avoidance of all unseemly subjects. We were talking together, like friends, I suppose, which was a bit different from the usual atmosphere we spent our nights in. Again I was left struggling to find what normal was for us. When the sun was finally beginning to rise, Edward parted with a promise to return tomorrow with his iPod.
"Later, Bella,"
he called, sending me his signature half-smile over his shoulder, as he retreated back into his yard. I sent up a silent prayer of thanks for the joyous reappearance of my first name. I sighed dreamily as I watched him scale the back wall of his house up to his balcony. Pathetic. With a groan and a shake of my head,